Thank you very much. Tout d'abord, je voudrais m'excuser du retard à cause du trafic sur le terrain. Sorry for you, because we have come traffic is very, yes. So, on va commencer. Honorable guest, representative of media, ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that I welcome you to the launch of the Nakau Programme, a rainforest conservation and carbon offset program from the Pacific Islands. The Pacific is particularly vulnerable to the impact of climate change. We have many low-lying islands and large rural population who are highly dependent on natural resources and predictable climate. This year, the Pacific has seen some of the devastating impact of extreme climate change. In March, the Category 5 cyclone Pam devastated my country, Vanuatu. It was the strongest storm even to the Pacific Island region. It whipped our homes, it whipped our gardens, and in one terrifying night, it whipped our 65% of my country's GDP. And now, the current El Nino climate pattern has caused widest spread, drought, and fire. As I speak to you today, many communities in Vanuatu and other Pacific Islands countries are facing difficulties accessing water. Vanuatu and our Pacific neighbor are on the front line of climate change impacts. For us, it is a reality that is already being felt. On a global scale, deep commitment, actions, and leadership are required to respond to these changes. Although our emission footprint is small, Vanuatu and other Pacific Island countries are playing our part to reducing emissions. In Vanuatu, the biggest impact can be achieved in the land use and forest sector. Forests play a crucial role in the well-being of Vanuatu communities. Around 80% of Vanuatu's population lives in rural area, depending heavily on forest resources to provide foods, building materials, cultural resources, and for maintenance on healthy water catchments. Forests are important ecological infrastructures. Pacific Island forests facts pressures for agriculture development and logging activities, which are also important for generating income for rural communities. It's within this context that the Nakau Programme is showing leadership both in the Pacific region and globally. The Nakau Programme was developed in the Pacific Island by Live and Learn an NGO and its partners through pilot projects implemented in Vanuatu, Fiji, and Solomon Islands. It has the potential to be a game changer in the Pacific, in that it provides an opportunity for indigenous rural Pacific Island communities to earn an income in exchange for their commitment to protecting rainforest. Importantly, the Nakau Programme is highly ethical. The rights of landowning claim to manage their land and reduce resources are upheld and promote and majority of economic benefits flow to the local landowners. This program has allowed us to see a future when rural landowners can choose community-based rainforest conservation as a viable option for earning livelihood. Forest conservation and REDD+ doesn't need to be seen as a threat to the forest sector, but it is a new paradigm. Conservation can be a viable forestry enterprise. Instead of receiving income from timber, forest owners can instead receive income from looking after their forests. The product they are selling in a carbon offset, representing a benefit to the global climate system. The Nakau Programme has made this future a possibility for landowners in the Pacific Island. Collectively, the Nakau project is in the Pacific Islands have placed over 6,500 hectares of rainforest under long-term protection. This project will save over 65,000 tons of greenhouse gas emission annually. Ladies and gentlemen, I am very pleased to officially launch the Nakau Programme at a Global Landscape Forum in Paris today. The Nakau Programme has shown that REDD+ can be economically feasible and socially equitable in the Pacific Islands. It has proven the concept. It can be done. Leadership in our region is strong. To have meaningful impact, this innovation must be taken to a larger scale. The Nakau Programme has developed the infrastructure to scaling up to happen. However, growth of the Nakau program and other like it will be driven by demand for carbon offset by governments and from the private sector from around the world. We also need you to show leadership. We need you to act. I would like to thank the European Union and in particular the delegation to the Pacific in Suva for providing financial support to Nakau Programme. I would also like to acknowledge AEDB, GIZ, and OZ for their contributions. Climate change is having a devastating impact in the Pacific Islands. A legally binding agreement to act must come out from the COP21 meeting. but solutions ought not be left slowly in the hands of governments. At every level, for industrials to communities and businesses, everyone has the role to play in addressing the climate change. In addressing the climate change challenge. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the launch of the Nakau Programme this afternoon. And I think at the beginning we omitted, I forgot to actually properly introduce the Honourable Minister for Climate Change from Vanuatu. And I thank you very much on behalf of the Nakau Programme and our partners and Global Landscape Forum for joining us and making the time to travel all this way. Firstly, across the Pacific, right across the world, and also across Paris from the COP21 to launch the program this afternoon with us. Thank you very much for your support and your words of wisdom this afternoon. Thank you, Tomas. Okay, I just introduced myself. My name is Robbie Henderson, and I'm a co-founder and director of the Nakau Programme. And today I'm representing our team and also our partners who assist us in this program. They will introduce themselves, but I would also like to acknowledge Anjali, who might wave her hand, who's available to talk to anyone after the session as well. We've been working on this program for the past 5 years. It's the first forest conservation program to produce carbon offsets from the Pacific Islands region. So that's a first that we're quite proud of. We form partnerships with indigenous landowners who live in very remote villages, particularly remote where you consider where the Pacific Islands are actually situated. Our current projects are in Vanuatu, Solomon Islands, and in Fiji. Indigenous people from these areas have relatively few options for economic participation, partly because of this remoteness. They're remote from markets. They're also remote in terms of being a long way from the transmission of new ideas and innovations. There's also challenges to access infrastructure and things like communication. So it does limit people's opportunities. Forests are actually extremely important for Pacific Islanders, particularly those living in a rural area. And they provide a lot of the basic needs for people. They keep the water clean, and a lot of people here will be aware of the various different ecosystem services that forests provide. But until now, the most accessible option for many people to earn income in these remote places has been to sign a contract with a logging company to exploit their timber resources, or to clear the land for cash cropping that they can sell in markets. So people have quite limited opportunities. The Nakau Program provides, for the first time for many people, a new option, a viable alternative to actually exploiting their forests for timber resources. So we can say to these people in rural communities, how would you like to earn the same level of income that you would receive if you logged your forest, but you can keep your forest as well? That's the value proposition for them. And people are very interested, of course, in that option because they value their forest. They get so many things from their forests that are important to them. So in other words, we can say to people, and we can help them to log their forests financially, but not physically. Instead of finding employment through working in logging camps as a labourer or working in a plantation, people through our program can find employment as rangers, or in some of the other small livelihood options which we facilitate as part of the program, such as nut farming for women in Vanuatu, nurseries growing seedlings and selling as part of the agroforestry activities that we do, and also beekeeping in Fiji. So it's a new economy which is driven by conservation instead of resource extraction. So to do this, we need to protect the forest, and we do this using various different instruments. The most important locally is traditional or customary law. So we work very closely with the landowners using indigenous ecological knowledge and local governance systems to actually protect the forests. And people understand this, it's very important to them, and it works very well. But we also use legal instruments that are available to protect the forests where we work. And this is important so that the Indigenous people have the rights to exclude external interests in their forests. So we use multiple instruments to protect the forest. We invest a huge effort in education and participatory processes. And these are very, very important. It's important that before people make a long-term commitment to forest protection, that they provide their free, prior and informed consent to whatever it is that they're committing to. So we work through a participatory land use planning process, and we look at really important issues such as availability of land for future housing, and also we look at food security. So we need to make sure it's very well planned so people can sustain their lives in the future. Within the Nakau program, the Indigenous landowners are the project owners. So we actually assist them to develop a local entity that manages the project. So for example, in Fiji, we work with 9 clans who formed a cooperative, and they're the project owner. The Nakau program and our NGO partners, we assist them to develop their project, and we're paid to do that as service providers. So we don't extract value from the actual project, and the majority of the benefits flow through to the Indigenous people. And that's part of the innovation of our program, and something that we think we can share as a lesson learned for other RED projects around the world. Projects in the Nakau program need to meet the integrity standards set by the Plan Vivo Foundation. You'll hear from the Plan Vivo Foundation in a moment. This includes the measurement of carbon, requirements for local participation and good governance, livelihood benefits, and also monitoring the impact on biodiversity, so the environmental benefits. As mentioned by the Minister, our current projects protect around 6,500 hectares of forest and reduce around 65,000 tonnes of CO2 emissions annually. But they do more than that. They also maintain clean water, they provide storm protection, access to forest resources for forest-dependent people, and they've built incredibly important social capital, which has had a multiplier effect in the communities where we're working. So they're kickstarting other businesses which can benefit from the capital that's provided by this new conservation economy. So as mentioned before, we're also doing beekeeping, we're also doing nut farming, we also have nurseries developed which diversify the income streams for forest owners. So that's really important. It's not, all the eggs are not in the one basket. The projects have shown that RED can be implemented equitably and effectively, but we recognise that our projects are relatively small, particularly on a global scale and in terms of the scale of the climate change problem. However, from the outset, we have designed the Nakau program to grow and to be replicated. The methodologies that we use have been deliberately designed to be low cost and tap into local capacity. We've also used what's called a grouped methodology, and this means that other projects can be added to our current projects as a group without having to go through the same validation process through Plan Vivo. They still have to have their projects checked for integrity before they actually are issued carbon offsets, but we can fast track the validation of methodologies, and that way we can actually grow our projects quicker. Our strategy was to first prove the concept, and now the concept is proven, We want to now save as much Pacific Island rainforest as we possibly can. So I want to tell you that we need to act quickly in the Pacific, particularly in countries like Papua New Guinea and Solomon Islands. Forest is being lost very, very quickly. And I wanted to share a story about Fiji. When we started our project there, we were working with 10 Matangali, 10 clan groups. But earlier this year, one of those clan groups called Vula Vula Ndamu, they came to us and very respectfully, very apologetically, and they said, through a ceremony, we want to exit the project, we want out of the project. And then we found out why. It was because they have a lot of young people. There's young people growing up, they're getting married, there's an obligation to provide housing. They have quite a large population of young people, and this is quite a typical story in developing countries. And they need to provide for them. So that clan has now signed a contract with a logging company. So we are in a race to save the last forests of the Pacific Islands. So we're here to hopefully really promote that issue and to keep working. And we've taken some risks to get where we are. We've built a very solid program with a lot of integrity, and we think we need to take some risks going forward because this race is very real. So today we've announced the commercial launch of the Nakau Programme, which means we're ready to provide rainforest carbon offsets for companies that wish to reduce their carbon footprint or become carbon neutral. We can supply them with highly ethical, quality assured and low risk social, environmental outcomes from our projects. Our main message in Paris while we've been here has been very simple. We now need finance to flow. We need the private sector to show leadership and to partner with us and other projects like ours. We also need the support of governments through the policies they set to expand the markets and to also get finances flowing. This is what it will take to allow our project and other projects like it to grow and expand and to win this race. So we're here on a more personal level with people in this room, if there are any of you out there, if you're from the private sector, if you want to act, here's an opportunity. Thank you, Tomas. I'm now going to introduce one of my colleagues, Glorinda Andre, who is the coordinator of our project in Vanuatu, who's going to share some stories from Vanuatu. Thank you.
Hi everyone, and thank you all for coming. I'm Glorinda, and I'm working on the Nakau Programme in Vanuatu. Ladies and gentlemen, today marks another opportunity to promote the commitments Pacific is undertaking to reduce the effects of climate change. In a small island nation in the South Pacific lies the beautiful country of Vanuatu, a home to 200,000 plus people whose lives are also affected one way or another due to the effects of climate change. However, in a remote village in the island of Espiritu Santo, a group of 100,000 plus landowners remain strongly of the view that keeping its remaining standing forest is of immensely greater value for current and future generations. Clearly, the success of a REDD+ project was vital for the survival of their future generation. A sustainable REDD+ project called the Loru Forest Project under the Nakau Programme began in November 2011, with an ambition to help farmers and forest-dependent people adopt new practices which conserve, sustain, and restore forests, while at the same time implementing sustainable financial and economic incentives. churning through the 5 years of this unique RED project, how analysis proved that the impacts of climate change slowly is adding to the number of problems already being faced by this community, especially the need to drink safe water and the need to gain an education. So, we are here today in Paris to tell the people that Paris is important for the nation of Vanuatu, for the future of our kids and our families, and for the future of these indigenous landowners who commit themselves to protect their forest. And we are supporting them. We are appealing to the developed countries that the rights of these indigenous people is important, and they need to show their commitment. They need to offset our credits, which we conserve our forest for a better access to clean water and a chance to better education. And ladies and gentlemen, by supporting us to offset your emissions, you are creating an opportunity to access of clean water and to an education for the kids of this community. And be mindful that you will not regret that one day when that child will stand up with pride and tell the world that I had a degree because my family offset our forest for my education. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Robbie just kindly asked me to introduce myself, so I will. My name is Matteo, and I'm with the Plan Vivo Foundation, the body that is currently certifying and accrediting the Vanuatu program. So I'm here today to sort of introduce the standards a little bit and to talk about our activities in connection with the Vanuatu program. Well, what's Plan Vivo? Well, Plan Vivo is a framework and a voluntary certification standard for community-based ecosystem services that focuses on livelihoods and co-benefits such as watersheds, gender, and biodiversity. It originated in 1994 with the Escalante project in Mexico. So we are the longest standing voluntary standard. And essentially we are relatively flexible in terms of requirements and in terms of costs for our project developers. Our projects undergo very rigorous and scrupulous technical assessment conducted by our technical advisory committee, and the project technical specifications, what you might call the project methodologies, are independently accredited by third-party auditors in order to calculate the project's expected ecosystem impacts. Under Plan Vivo, we have two systems for accreditation, ex ante and ex post. And in the case of the Nakau Programme, the RED Plus projects in this specific case are ex post. This standard, as I said, is relatively flexible compared to other current certifications because we accept both pre-approved methodologies, but also we encourage program and projects to come up with their own calculations and their own methodologies and technical specifications. We also approve or rather accept methodologies from VCS and additionality tools, and also leakage calculation tools from other standards. Currently, we have 53 projects either registered or under development in over 30 countries around the world, and we've issued over 2 million Plan Vivo certificates since 2008. And most importantly, the sales of Plan Vivo certificates have actually generated $9 million that have been channeled into local rural communities around the world. Essentially, that's, I guess, one of the most important achievements so far, helping livelihoods and alleviating poverty in the global south. Our project coordinators are mostly NGOs and international organizations such as the WWF, 49 Flora International, the Clinton Foundation, and obviously Live and Learn in the Pacific Islands. To conclude, I would like to sort of encourage the link between organizations such as Live and Learn, Plan Vivo, and the private sector, especially the need for the private sector to engage in more sustainable business models, to include offsetting strategies such as what we're promoting here today, and their commitments to the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, that currently Plan Vivo is aligning to. I'm here with the rest of the speakers for a few minutes afterwards, and I'll be very happy to answer any questions that you might have about Plan Vivo and our work with the Nakau Programme. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Claire Wigg, and I come from Sweden, and I'm here to represent the private sector to some extent because I'm in a company that sells carbon offsets, for instance, from this program to companies in Sweden. We've been doing that for 10 years successfully. We're one of the leading players in Sweden, and we've only, from the beginning, worked with Plan Vivo standard and more later with Gold standard. But we chose Plan Vivo from the beginning because we felt it was the most ethical standard. It was working best with ecosystem services, and we still believe that. We've sold about half the credits, all the offsets that have been generated from Plan Vivo projects. Today we sell offsets from 12 projects. This will be the next. And we sell them to companies that want to be more sustainable. I guess Sweden, we have slight advantage that people are very aware of sustainability already today, but they have to some extent got to find new ways even to do that. So there's pressure from consumers, there's pressure from investors, there's regulation, and there is pressure from customers, from individuals to act more sustainably. And when we start working with them, we obviously need to do some measurement first. We usually find that they have some things that they can do, but in terms of fuel and electricity and things, there's quite a lot that's already in place. So they actually struggle sometimes to find good ways to go further. And they see, some of the companies we work with see good market opportunities in offsetting. So if they find a good way to communicate about what they want to do with offsetting, then they can win customers, basically. And so I give you a couple of quick examples. We have a small family company that imports beef. They know they're part of the problem, but they want to do something about it, and they'd like to encourage people to choose better produced beef. So they've decided to offset, from a life cycle perspective, the emissions from beef that's produced organically, for instance. And to do that, they've chosen a project that has a link to cattle grazing in Bolivia. So now they have a story they can tell their consumers that will encourage, hopefully, the buyers to choose the better quality of beef. And then another example would be a company that takes care of trees in Sweden for public places and parks. And a lot of their customers are obviously public authorities, and they're finding in tenders, if they show they A, measure, B, reduce, and C, offset their emissions, and they actually get more points in the tenders. And they have a great story to tell as well, which is we take care of trees in Sweden, and we support the protection of trees, in this case in Tanzania. So our involvement with the Nakau Programme is going to be to promote the offsets from the programme to Swedish customers. They'll be companies, largely, and we think there's a good opportunity to do that in terms of selling the story of reducing logging, taking care of small islands. Sweden is a land of forests, lakes, and small islands, and that those islands are threatened by climate change, and we have a responsibility to help those islands and those forests to be protected. So we're delighted to be here today, and we look forward to a long-term cooperation with the Nakau Programme. Thank you.
I would just like to thank all our speakers today, and to thank you all for coming along to the launch of the Nakau Programme, and just to invite you to come and speak with us. I'm not sure if we've got time for any questions. I don't think so. Apologies for that. I think everyone's running a little bit behind schedule, but we'll be available. Please come and see us, and we'll be very happy to share our story and images and anything we can with you today. Thank you again.